Hi, I'm Tracey L Fisher. Welcome to Tracey L Fisher, a reentry point of view, unapologetic. I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Gene Barr, CEO of Pennsylvania Chambers Industry, correct?
Chamber of Business and Industry.
Chamber of Business Industry here. And we're here in Harrisburg. And I've been talking to Gene Barr about certain things that goes on in the urban community. And we was talking about lack of education, lack of equality, and lack of economics. And me and Gene been having quite a conversation about that. And so I asked him to come on the show and explain, first of all, give his background of who he is and how he come to this position. Can you explain to my audience who you are? How did you come to this position?
Absolutely. So as you said, my name is Gene Barr, President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. So let's talk a little bit about what the Chamber is. We're the largest broad-based business advocacy group in Pennsylvania. About 10,000 members, all sizes of businesses, types of businesses located all across Pennsylvania. By advocacy, what we do is we push for those policies that in our view are going to make for a more prosperous Pennsylvania for everybody in Pennsylvania. So we work all kinds of issues because so many issues are important, just as you noted about the number of issues that go into that. I've been president for 9 years. I've been here at the Chamber since 2003. Before that, I worked briefly doing government affairs at a law firm, and then before that, 20 years in the oil industry that started down at one of the refineries along the Delaware River in Delaware County. I was born and raised in Chester Upland School District before I moved out of state many, many years ago. So Philly area we still count as home for my wife and I in many cases.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you drive through there, so you actually saw the decline.
Oh, no question about it.
How did that affect you?
No question about it. I mean, it's sad when you go down to those areas in the city of Chester where my family's from, my wife's family's from. You saw the decline in the churches down there that were so closely affiliated with families and culture and upbringing. You saw the jobs that migrated away and out to those areas, and then unfortunately you saw the decline in what was a great city. There's lots of talk about trying to bring it back, which we'd all love to see. But of course, looking at Philadelphia too, from a larger area, Philly has significant poverty programs. It's the most poverty-stricken major U.S. city. And so we've got to come up with some programs that can address that.
Absolutely. And because I too is a part of Chester, because I have children that was there. My grandfather had church in there.
I remember you said that.
Right, on 2nd and Central. So I grew up in Chester. I'm from Philadelphia, but that was my second home there. So I can see the decline in there as well. Like, for example, I noticed when they tore all the houses down by 2nd Street, right, and they built the stadium.
Yes.
And then they built the casino.
Yes.
But what happened to the community benefit agreement? Because when Chester High School started back to school, as well as the elementary schools, right, the teachers had to take their own money to buy supplies.
Yeah.
This is before the corona and all this hit, but they had to take their own money to buy supplies. So how is it that the political people in Chester allow for casinos to be built and allow for soccer fields to be built, but not let them take care of the school system in Chester? It's on such a decline right now. What do you think of that?
Well, the decision was made that what was going to happen is that the casino and the soccer stadium, which is both beautiful facilities. In fact, the soccer stadium was built on the site of my wedding reception. They tore the building down and put the soccer stadium up. My wife wasn't happy with that. But these were supposed to bring economic development to the city of Chester.
Right.
And unfortunately, what has happened is they put in different ramps off the Commodore Barry Bridge, so you don't have to go through Chester to get down there. So that renaissance in terms of the shops and the restaurants really didn't come back. And I would argue that we have failed generations of kids in the Chester Upland School District. And I would argue more than anything else that one of the best predictors of poverty is inadequate educational opportunities. and giving parents the choice to send their kids. I went to a parochial school. There was an all-boys parochial school in the city of Chester, since closed. Took away one of the opportunities to give an option to kids down there. It's why I'm still so affiliated with the school, St. James, because we raised dollars under the EITC program, Education Improvement Tax Credit, to give kids down in that area another option.
Right.
Parents have to have options for their kids to make the best choice for their kids. And unfortunately, when you're bound by your zip code, that doesn't work out all that well in many cases. And unfortunately, we're seeing the results of that in too many places in this state.
Explain to my audience what you mean by bound by your zip code.
Well, look, if you're sitting in whatever part of Philadelphia or Delaware County, if you're in, let's use City of Chester, you can use whatever else you want to. If you're in Southwest Philly or West Philadelphia or North Philadelphia, and you live at whatever your address is, your school is the one down the street if you want to go to a public school. Now, interestingly, if we said to somebody, hey, you live in whatever your zip code is, that's your grocery store over there, we'd never take that, would we?
No.
If you said your doctor's the one across the street or your dentist is the one around the corner, we'd say, I don't want to go to that one. But we do it for our kids.
Right.
So why do we not give parents more options in education and to be able to give them the ability to find the program that best suits the needs of their own children? And we ought to be devising programs that don't get the best teachers out of those schools. We should be coming up with incentive, find the schools that need the most assistance and pay teachers more to go to those schools.
Right.
Give them the resources there's a fair amount of resources, and if you look at the numbers, what has happened is a lot of the dollars have gone to school administrators. The administrators have grown, not necessarily as much in terms of teachers. So we've got to figure out how we develop those resources, get them to the kids that need them, but we really do need to figure out putting more parents in charge of their kids' future.
Right. Giving them options.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying is, which I agree, is that the reason some of the poverty is in the urban community right now is because lack of options that's on the table.
Yes.
Right? Lack of education.
Yes.
Lack of economics.
Yes.
That comes through because
and there's
some
racism,
of the money,
no question about it.
Right. So the money that comes through go mostly to administration.
A lot
more
of it
so
does.
than it does actually into the child that actually need the education.
A lot of that's absolutely correct.
So what's the solution in your mind to that problem?
First part of the problem is we talked about choice. We're an organization that, to be honest, we don't like. When you look at a monopoly, it doesn't usually deliver what you really need.
Right.
As I said, if you said you have to go to that grocery store because you live here, there's no incentive for that grocery store to do better. Why should they?
Right.
Tracy
No
Fisher's got to
competition.
go to this.
Right.
He has to go to this grocery store. What happens now? They put on different products. They price it to get you to go here or to go to a different one, and you pick the one that best suits your needs. You might want, Giant versus Whole Foods versus, ShopRite. You get to pick. Not with schools, unless you want to pay in many cases. There are some, clearly the charter school side. So options, not have monopolies in terms of schools. We also need to begin looking at numerous other things, as we've stated. There's clearly, racism is part of this, but when you look and you tie economic inequality, more so than anything else, it's explained by educational opportunities. We need to give kids, have them exposed to a wide range of things. The other thing that hurts us, to be blunt, the city of Philadelphia is its own school district, but having 500 school districts in Pennsylvania makes it really hard to deliver the services that we need.
It's 500 school districts?
500 school districts, which means what? 500 superintendents, however many assistant superintendents, however many other administrators. So there's 500.
Wow.
So I grew up in Delaware County. There are 49 municipalities in Delaware County, 49 municipal governments, 15 school districts. Delaware County is like the second or third smallest county in Pennsylvania, but 15 school districts. So you've got to figure out how you get those resources allocated from a Chester Upland to a Wallingford Swarthmore to a Radnor that all have different needs. Makes it really difficult.
Now, let me ask you this, because you just enlightened me on 500.
500
okay.
school districts.
So all right, let me ask this question. what is the budget for yearly for Pennsylvania?
Well, the
As far as education.
I don't know the exact number, but keep in mind where those dollars come from. Some of them come from local taxes. There'd be property taxes and income taxes. There's state assistance that's delivered. And there's federal money that comes in for school districts. When you add up all of that, Pennsylvania ranks, I believe, the fair way to look at that is not the total dollars. You look at the per pupil spend, because that accounts for the size of the state. So Pennsylvania is like 10th or 11th in terms of per pupil spend in the United States. And I would argue we're not getting the results for the dollars that we spend in terms of education in this Commonwealth. We're just not.
Now, is that because of the structure of it or because of whom we have representing it?
That's a great question. I think some of it is the structure. I think some of it is the fact that we need to incentivize the more veteran teachers to stay in some of the more difficult schools. I mean, there's an incentive for them to move out of there. So you go into certain schools in inner city Philadelphia and other places, you might get the brand new teacher, which, look, everyone has to start somewhere, but you don't want a whole school of brand new teachers because they got nobody to turn to as a mentor.
Some veterans in there.
You need some people to say, here's how you need to handle this. In many cases, I understand that they don't have that because when teachers get seniority, they want to bid out of those schools and go somewhere else.
Right.
You need to incentivize them to stay because it's those kids in those schools, in many cases, that really need that veteran teacher, the one with the great experience.
Now, with that being said, right, most parents, they don't have the time, like right now with the corona that's going on and stuff, to sit home, right, and be at the table and help their children with the homework or schoolwork and stuff like that. How is that, like, to help turning out right now? Like, how is y'all seeing that, Harrisburg, the outcome of that?
That's certainly an issue. Look, the remote learning is problematic. I have a daughter who is a teacher. Okay. She's remote teaching now. She's already seen kids that have regressed 6 months, a year in terms of their math and reading scores.
Wow.
And I think with what we're seeing in this, if we keep this remote learning going for a while, we're going to see that accelerate. We've got to find a way either to get kids back in school or to make remote learning work. And you're right. There's parents, in many cases where both parents work. It's tough for them to come home. I get that, but parents really do need to get engaged in their kids' education. They got to make sure that if they're learning remotely, that they're there, that they're paying attention, that they're getting their work done. You need to do that. I mean, we all had that as parents. Parents, hey, did you get your homework done? You're not going outside till your homework's done. Or you get to go outside when you come in, it's after dinner. You're not going back out again, you're doing your homework. You're sitting down and doing this. Hey, are you going? Parents need to stay on top of that.
And here's what I noticed, because I have a lot of grandchildren, and at that age of doing remote learning, and a lot of them have short attention span.
Yeah.
So you can sit them at the table to do the work. You turn your back to put toast in.
They're gone.
Right. So that's hard for the teacher to relate to that.
It is.
To them.
It is.
So we have to have stuff in place for that as well. So what's really hurting the community right now, like you said, is the lack of education.
Yep.
Let's talk about the equality.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about the equality in the community?
Oh, we have got to work on. One of the things that we've done, and you and I have worked on together, has been, one, addressing historic issues that hurt people in disadvantaged communities, including many of the black communities and people of color in Philadelphia. A lot of that has been criminal justice reform. A lot of that has been trying to address clean slate legislation. We're the first state to do clean slate legislation. This organization was part of it, and you and I have talked about that numerous times. Probation parole reform, knocking down barriers for licensing. Somebody goes in and, while they're incarcerated, they learn a skill and they come out and when the board says, I'm sorry, yeah, you're a bad character, we're not letting you go make money. That's ridiculous. And so to the credit, this administration has worked on that, and we and the legislature and administration have worked on knocking down some of those barriers, because that's nonsense. We got to find ways of getting people employed, because the best way to keep people on the straight and narrow is a job. It's a job. And so we've got to find ways of doing that. And to go back to your other point about, you're right, kids, they lose attention, they go off. Some of that is maybe we're not putting in front of them the things that interest them. So it's a matter of putting an array of options in front of kids and saying, what are you best suited to do? Maybe you're best suited to be a doctor, maybe a lawyer, maybe you're best suited to become an electrician, because those are really good jobs. And I think it's giving kids the opportunity to learn from a multitude of things, and giving them different options that allow them to make the best use of their talents. So what we need to do is make sure that people are exposed to those. It doesn't always do great. I mean, look, we all know people who have gone to a 4-year school because the parents said, you're going to a 4-year school, and they get out and they got a degree in something that might not give them the ability to have a family-sustaining job. Meanwhile, they could have gone to maybe a 2-year program that gives them the ability to sustain themselves and their family. We've got to give them all of those options, because we don't always do that.
Right. I remember when I was, I think I was in like the 10th grade or something, and that's how I learned how to work on a car.
Yeah.
Okay, that's when we had the trades inside the schools. And I remember going to mechanic class, and the guy was teaching us how to change the tires and change the oils. And my friend, they was going to carpentry work and all that stuff. So actually, we was leaving school with a trade.
Yes.
To be able to create a living, start our own business if we wanted to. But they took that out of the school.
I know.
And now it's not even in the community.
I know.
So it would be nice if we can put something together where we can put, because college is not for everyone.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
So you have young men right now that's standing on the corners, carrying guns, getting high, and doing other things, right? Because they believe they're out of options.
Yes.
And there's none in front of them that they can choose from, far as positive anyway. But I believe if you set up a trade school in there, and that occupy their times, and then it gets them to work with their hands and stuff. You understand?
Absolutely.
And if they at this trade school, then that means they're not shooting at you and I are trying to rob one of us. And we giving them something, some pride back into them.
Correct.
So when it was taken out of the school, I'm trying to figure out why nobody didn't see the domino effect of this.
Right. And look, we talk now. I mean, when you and I grew up, the auto mechanic was the guy with dirty hands and the greasy hands and everything. Those are some of the most high-tech jobs we have now. When you look at that, everything is computer-based. You have to really understand that side of the business in order to do that. And in looking at this, because the governor asked me to sit on the Workforce Command Center and be one of the co-chairs. And we've looked at this, and I think there's enough schools for that around. It's a matter of exposing our young people to those options, which, as you know, we don't do a good enough job. Too often we're telling them, go to college, go to college, go to college. I also firmly believe that we need to stop thinking about K through 12 or pre-K through 12, because early childhood is really critical. It should be pre-K to 12 plus, because I think you need something specific after you get out of high school. It might be a 6-month program, a year, a 2-year, a 4-year. It might be 10 or 12 years in school, depending on whether you want to be a doctor. But we've got to think about something that gives somebody something, a certification, a degree, which they can say, hey, I'm certified to do this. I have a degree in this. And somebody says, oh, wow, I'll bring you in, I'll show you how I want it done, but you have the basics that we need. We got to do a better job of getting people the basics they need in order to become successful. Because look, everybody wants to be successful. Nobody comes in and says, I want to be a failure. Nobody says, I want to be a failure. Right. Everybody wants to be a success. So how do we give young people the tools they need to be successful? Right. That's what we should be talking about.
And I believe, like with Philadelphia, right? Because in Pennsylvania, you have 67 counties, right?
Correct.
And Philadelphia being one of the largest of them. But it's number one in poverty.
It's number one in poverty, number one in population, and is one of the most highly taxed cities in the United States. So wow, you would think if you have high taxes, you take that money and you distribute it and use it for programs, but it's not working that way. So I would argue that the high taxes help drive jobs out of the city in many cases into surrounding areas. Pennsylvania has the second highest corporate tax rate So we often have companies who say, hey, I'd like to go locate in Pennsylvania. What's your rate? Oh, it's 9.99%. That's on top of the federal taxes. That's on top of the local taxes. And I will talk to people who work trying to attract companies to Pennsylvania, out of state government, who say, they tell that to a company, go, yeah, we're good. We're going to go to North Carolina. Thanks, though. That happens.
I heard that's
all the
happened
time.
with Amazon
It happens all the time.
when they
Happens
wanted
all
to
the
come
time.
here.
Happens all the time. Amazon looked at us. They wound up trying to go up in New York, and certain people said, we don't want your $100,000 a year jobs. So they went down to Washington, D.C. Yeah, there were literally people who said, we don't want your jobs here. We don't want your jobs here. It makes no sense at all.
Wow.
So there were some issues with that. Workforce is, when I talk to my companies who say, and I will ask them, whether they're in pharma, whether they're in manufacturing, whatever they're in, okay, what's part of, why are you not investing? We want to get you investing more in PA. And the answer is, well, you know what? You got a big tax rate. And the second thing that always comes in is workforce. We need to make sure that we have the people we need to fill the jobs we're going to bring to Pennsylvania. And as I understand it, Amazon wasn't quite sure that we'd be able to do that because they need a lot of those high-skilled jobs. It goes back to what we were talking about. Give people the options to be successful. Predict where these jobs are going to be. Predict you need so many programmers here, how many coders you need here, how many electricians, how many welders you need, and let people say, you know, I would like to do that. I would like to get the skills to be able to do that because I'm looking at what the numbers are. And right now, every business I talk to says they can't hire people. There's plenty of opportunities out there, and we got a 10% unemployment rate in this state. Wow. But it's a matter of matching those jobs with the skills and getting people plugged together to get into those.
And with that being said, we're running out of time, but I truly believe that to rectify that whole situation, we have to start in a small area just to show that it works. Just do a little area.
Completely agree with you.
And let's make that the blueprint.
Yep.
So the rest of the city can pick it up, and then it can spread throughout the state. See, we try to take care of it with one brush. It's not going to happen like that.
I completely
So
agree.
I truly believe we have to get individuals that's truly involved around the table like this and discuss what needs to be done and agree on a certain area, right? And if I'm at the table, it's going to be my area. Believe that. And we're going to get this done and show that it can work.
And here's what we're going to do. This organization is going to be launching something. We've already started. We're going to take it to the next level, bringing Pennsylvania back. We got to figure out how to get this economy out of the ditch that we had to drive it into because of the coronavirus. But we need to be better. We need to put the resources in that will allow us to make the policy decisions that will take this Commonwealth to a better place, to create equality of opportunity among all of our citizens, to be able to fix those educational issues that you and I have talked about, to fix the issues of racism that we've seen, to fix the issues of systemic poverty that we've seen. We need to make the policy decisions that will get us there, the smart policy decisions that will have people say, wow, Pennsylvania's doing some great stuff. We need to put our resources in Pennsylvania, but we need to make the decisions that causes an investor to say, I want to be there. And right now, in many cases, we're not making those decisions. We need to create the workforce that will attract people here. We need to create the climate that will attract people here. We need to do the policies that will have people say, I want to invest in Pennsylvania.
Right now in this world, and you have the Democrats and you have the Republicans, and now you have Black Lives Matters and everybody trying to come together, work together. Do you see it working out in any way far as supporting Black Lives Matter moving forward?
We are unfortunately so polarized right now that, and far too many people that are pitching an ideological stance and can't see the other side. We have got to move beyond that, and we need to create opportunities for all of our citizens. It's one of the reasons why we've joined with the U.S. Chamber on the equality of opportunity for everybody. We can't leave anybody behind. And if we don't come together and leave, kind of take off the dark glasses, reach out to the other side, as we've done. You and I have worked together on criminal justice reform issues where Republicans and Democrats have come together. We got to find more ways of doing that. Because if we don't, we can't leave people behind in this economy. We can't continue to do that. One, it's the wrong thing to do. And two, we're not going to be successful by leaving a whole bunch of really talented people off to the side and denying them the equality of opportunity, denying them the educational opportunities they need to be successful, and denying them the ability to move forward. We have got to get out of our fixed stances and start reaching across the aisle.
And with that, I'm Tracey L Fisher. This is a reentry point of view, unapologetic. Hi, I'm Tracey L Fisher, the face of reentry. I'm gonna do this short little video on returning citizen, the mind frame of an individual that come home from being incarcerated. People always ask me about how can I help someone when they come home? What does it take to help someone when they come home? Well, first of all, you have to understand the mind frame of the individual, he or she, when they come home. And most of the individuals that come home, not all, but most of them, majority of them, they come home broken. They come home weak, especially the males. They spend their whole time in jail working out, doing exercise, sitting around, reading frivolous books, watching frivolous TV, having frivolous conversation, right? But they don't work their brain mentally. So when they come home, physically they're strong, but mentally they're weak. And when they come into society, they don't know what to expect. They're afraid, and nobody knows how to deal with them because they're not telling you they're afraid once they enter back into society. But the reality of it is, everyone needs to see a psychiatrist. Not that you're crazy, but you need to see a psychiatrist to help you get your thoughts straight so you can understand what's going on out here in society. Because the only thing you know is an incarcerated environment. There's two yous when you come home. There's the incarcerated you, and there's the society you. Once you're in the society, obstacles come your way. Situations occur. And the only thing you know how to do is handle it with a incarcerated mind frame. And when you handle it with a incarcerated mind frame, that's why the recidivism rate is so high. That's why you go back to jail, because you didn't know how to function out here in society, because you was never taught how to be responsible when you was incarcerated. That's because when you was in society, you wasn't responsible. That's why you went to jail. So the rehabilitation part of jail is non-existent. It don't exist. You have to rehabilitate yourself. If you're looking for the government to rehabilitate you so you can come home and be productive in society, you done really lost your mind. Because there's no way in the world that the government is going to allow you to come home and be productive in society and stop their money flow. They make money off of you once you go to jail. Everybody gets paid when you go to jail. When you go to jail, you create over 100 jobs. The cops lock you up. The judge, the DA, the prosecutor, the public defender, the sheriff, the county judge, the COs, the wardens, everyone. Everybody makes money off you but you. But you. Now, when I was incarcerated years ago, they was making $32,000 a year. They made over $700,000 plus off of me just for them 22 years. Now they receiving $42,000 a year. It done went up $10,000. So if the government is making $1 trillion off of this business here, but they only putting in $100 million to actually so-called help it from actually occurring again, that's not going to happen. And on that note, thank you. And I'm Tracey L Fisher, the face of reentry, and this is a reentry point of view.